digitaljamsessions.com. Hello and welcome to this Digital Jam session. Today we are coming at you live on Christmas Day. We have the wonderful SanjSurati, we have Maxim Jager back with us, and we also have Alan Sott.
Hello.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for stepping away from your Christmas table to join us on the Digital Jam sessions.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
So, for the benefit of our lovely listeners who are so dedicated they are listening to this episode on Christmas Day, can I ask you to explain a little bit more about who you are and what you do? And we're going to start with you, Maxim.
Oh, God. Who am I? I'm a man. I'm a filmmaker, futurist, and media tech guy. I make up stuff about the future and leave the room before anybody knows if I'm telling the truth or not. And I can talk for a good few companies about everything from storytelling, media technology, artificial intelligence, novel energy systems, and in particular, the future of the human condition.
Wonderful. Sanj, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you get up to?
My name's Sanj. I'm an award-winning multidisciplinary digital creative with over 20 years of experience within the music, fashion, and luxury industries. I started work in the music business, developing an understanding of e-commerce and social trends within the web back in the late 90s. And from there, I started to help digital startups target music industry professionals during the seismic shift of consumer habit evolution from physical products to digital. I've worked with, many award-winning artists and have brokered some, exciting initiatives with some of the biggest brands in the world. And my most notable project so far has been part of the team that delivered the 2-pack hologram at Coachella back in 2012.
Thank you very much, Sanj. And Alan, why don't you tell us all about what you've been up to?
My name's Alan. I'm a digital marketer. I've worked over the past decade in website tech and digital marketing across B2C, B2B companies, national companies, multinational companies, and quite a few startups. Since then, it creates like this growth for me. I love new technology. I love figuring out how to use new technology for marketing. I love new platforms, and I love Christmas. So we're good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for sparing us just a teeny tiny moment away from your turkey or festive meal of choice. And I wanted to
I'm vegetarian.
Oh, of course, you're vegetarian. So what would that be? Would that be a nut loaf or
a tofurkey?
Oh, I've never heard of that, but that's a new thing now.
Tofurkey?
It's basically a turkey made out of tofu.
Tofu turkey. I hadn't heard of this, but now I know. Thank you for that lesson. But what I wanted to do today is I wanted to have a little bit of a future gaze in terms of what we think is happening with technology, what we think the big trends are going to be. Now is a time when everybody will be talking about what's going to be at CES and, all the other cool things that are going to be coming out in 2018. And so I kind of want to start with a little bit of a look back in 2017 of the things that we thought were quite cool or the things that we thought were supposed to make a big splash but really didn't do what they said they were going to do in the tin. And then let's have a look at what we think is going to happen in 2018. So first of all, the one thing I want to know is what has been the single piece of technology or, hardware, software, whatever that thing was that you were really buzzed about in 2017. And then when it actually came along, you were like, I didn't quite do what I thought it was going to do. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. I'm going to start with you, Sanj.
I think for me, there's been a kind of, I've been working with AR for about 6 years now. And, we've done some really big projects using augmented reality and working with big brands. And, there was a little bit of a virtual reality bubble, which happened, back into 2014, into 2015, and also into 2016, which didn't really grow to the size that everyone thought it was going to be. So everyone's kind of jumped back onto augmented reality this year. And everyone's been talking about it, and share prices of AR businesses have gone up. Obviously, Apple launched their Apple AR kit this year, and Facebook launched their Facebook AR kit this year. And they're doing some interesting things, and the platform started to get desirable again. But I haven't seen any real innovations with augmented reality this year. Nothing that's really made me feel like it's kind of been a game changer within the way people kind of communicate, from a habitual perspective.
Okay. You've managed to just 2 industries at the same time, Sanj. I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, I mean, you know what the tech sector's like. Everyone gets excited about new and shiny things, and when the new and shiny things don't actually equate to what's been promised, when businesses promise the future and the future doesn't appear, they start to sort of jump on other things, and people jump back onto AR, and so what? That's kind of how I about it.
Okay. Max, and what about you? What's the tech that really had you excited and then just let you down?
Well, I think I'm going to say two as well, if that's okay. I was going to say VR as well, but I was going to say specifically that I think we have to permit the developers of new technologies to have their time where they do the groundwork, and you have this arc of the development where there's this new concept that could be amazing. I remember a few years ago, somebody announcing they discovered the thing that makes viruses, and that they were going to cure them completely. There was going to be one vaccine. And, we were talking about, people would wonder why they sold tissues in corner shops. And, adults would tell children, well, sometimes people would have a cold, and the children would say, what's that? And there would be this new development. And of course, that then had to go through all of the medical testing and the stages, and God knows where it is now. I think the thing for me with VR is that, the first time I tried what was described to me as a good VR headset, the first thing I thought was, I can see each individual pixel. I'm looking at a kind of gauze of an image. And if I move my head a bit, it looks okay. And now the VR headsets are getting better. If anyone's tried the Star VR headset, it's pretty spectacular.
But it's so big and heavy, and who's going to wear that for longer than half an hour?
Pure details. But it's version whatever. But I think that the where we're at with the VR technology and AR is that you've got things like the HP backpack computing. We've got the new kind of generation of headset. Oculus are talking about a new version of a headset that's free roaming, and everyone's talking about new headsets. For me, the disappointment has been the lack of free roaming VR and just the speed at which the headsets are being developed. I wanted it to be better quality, faster. But I actually feel like it just is taking time, and that's okay. My biggest disappointment, really, though, is I want to be able to talk to my computer and order pizza, and I think that, and other foods, doesn't have to be just pizza.
But you can do that with Alexa. You can ask Alexa. Oh no, don't do it, Alexa. Yeah. Just back away. she's glowing at me. Yeah, she's glowing. She's listening.
I think that, we're still a couple of years from proper natural language interaction with computers. I'm developing some early stage development of some technologies to help with that. But I think that this idea of having a genuine AI assistant a la Her, if you've seen that amazing film, we're still a way off. I kind of want that to hurry up.
Okay. Alan, what has been the biggest disappointment of 2017?
2017, I really thought VHS was going to make a comeback. And
did it go away?
I'm really upset that it... no, I mean, I'm going to go a little bit of a different angle on this. First of all, I do want to agree with everything that Sanj and Maximo said. One of the things I want to say about VR, and this has become a little bit of a sticking point for me, is that I think a lot of companies in their rush to have a VR item are almost kind of making it a bit of a novelty, and I think they're diluting the importance of the technology by doing that. That would be the one thing that's disappointed me in 2017. The other thing is compatibility. Technology, and Tanya and I, we've had this conversation recently, actually, about how we have all these technology, we have wearables, and we have everything being developed, but using it is a problem because external technology isn't keeping up with what we're purchasing or what we're capable of doing. So that's been a bit a disappointment for me.
Okay. So I'm just going to go off on a complete tangent left limb here and say that the thing that I'm quite disappointed about at this point in time is that I don't have some kind of machine in my home that can 3D print my food like I was on, aboard at the Enterprise or something, and I can just say to my wall, I want green tea warm or whatever the thing may be. I'm kind of
great. Hot.
Yeah, I don't do Earl Grey. I do green tea. You've completely missed the reference, Maxim.
It's coming.
But the thing is I feel slightly disappointed that 3D printing hasn't kind of come as far as it's supposed to have come. And there is so much promise and people talking about, 3D printed organs and 3D printed food and all this other awesome, cool stuff. But it still feels like it's like when somebody has done something with 3D printing, it's just been a little bit of a gimmick. It doesn't feel like it's really had the impact that people thought it was going to have. So that's my bugbear for 2017, because I still have faith. I still have hope in VR and AR. And whilst I fully agree that it hasn't quite delivered on the ambitions this year, I think that's mostly because people set the bar way, way too high. So I'm going to give it some leeway. I'm going to say I enter 2018 with hope for VR and AR. But having said all of that, I am curious to find out from you, what is the thing that you're really excited about for 2018? And it doesn't have to be a technology thing here. This could just be just generalistically culture, tech, whatever the thing may be. What is the thing you're really excited for? And I'm going to throw out two things right now because I'm just really sad and geeky, and I'm just going to put these on the table right now. Is Ready Player One better be as good as it's supposed to be, and the new Lara Croft Tomb Raider film better be as good as the trailer looks like it is. Just saying. But Alan, what's your thoughts on this?
My thoughts on what I'm looking forward to in 2018?
Yeah, what's the thing?
There's a lot of things I'm looking forward to. I self-driving cars. I was having a thing for myself yesterday, and as I often do, just think about random things. And I had like a total recall moment where I was thinking of Johnny Cab, and I'm thinking, once the automated cars are coming out, are we going to have Johnny Cabs? I would love to see a Johnny Cab in 2018.
Oh, that would be awesome. Because, of course, for those who've listened to the show for a while, you'll all know that I refuse to learn how to drive, because I am absolutely confident that within my lifetime we will have fully autonomous vehicles and I will never need to learn how to drive. So I'm with Alan on this. I'm waiting for the fully autonomous vehicles. I want Johnny Cab. Yes. Maxim, what is the thing you're looking forward to?
All of the things, I think, is the phrase. There's just so much cool stuff that we're on the brink of. I actually think, you're talking about the disappointment with 3D printing. I actually think the disappointment is consumer level 3D printing. The high end, some pretty awesome stuff has been happening. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word awesome. I've just been spending time in America. Some pretty acceptable stuff has been happening. And, the big challenge with 3D printing is the materials that are used. And of course, Ray Kurzweil is saying that we'll be 3D printing matter itself not too long from now. And that will take some work. But I really do think we're, in historical terms, a hop and a skip from, hey, person in the wall, give me hot green tea and it'll come. And of course, that's going to raise some really interesting questions about the nature of being and reality. But the stuff I'm excited about,
commerce.
Oh my goodness! I mean, the everything. And if you look at way back when, it's still out there, the game's Second Life, if you can call it a game. We know what happens when you have an entirely intellectual property based economy, and it actually works out pretty well. So we're all good for that. For me, the really exciting stuff is, my goodness, first of all, live rewriting of genetic code. So there's a guy that had a rare genetic disease. They've now performed a procedure where his genes have been rewritten live so that at least genetically, he no longer has that disease. And they're ready to start testing and see whether the symptoms are going to go away, which they should do. So we're now looking at rewriting our DNA live.
It's interesting.
Our nature. That's really exciting because I think it'd be awesome to have a pair of arms.
It's interesting you're saying this. I don't know about the extra arms, but it's interesting you're saying this because I saw something literally just this week where there's a new treatment for blood disorder, and they have given a number of patients genetic treatments, and it's been proven that it's worked. It's removed the need for ongoing treatment. And I remember watching the interview with the doctor, and the broadcaster kind of asked her, there's a very logical question, which is, how expensive is this? And does the cost actually measure up to the ongoing cost of the treatments that this person would have had to have every month of their life for the rest of their life versus a one-off genetic treatment? And they said at the time, it's still more expensive to do this genetic treatment, but we hope that the price will come down. And I think that we are at a really exciting cusp of this kind of genetic treatment, but I think it does open up some very interesting moral and ethical doors. I mean, when do we get to the point when we say, I want my baby screened for all possible illnesses? And by the way, can you just change the eye colour and the hair colour because I want my baby to be, look a particular way.
It's not that. It's not the aesthetic stuff that's worrying. What's worrying is the IQ and the physical capacity. What happens when we discover the genetic marker, the genetic influence that makes your baby more intelligent than other babies? And then you end up with this kind of arms race where, you've got children at 7 going through university. We're changing what it means to be human. And, I think we've spoken about this before, that I think that if you look at what our humanity is, ultimately personhood is rooted in the concept of volition, if you have free will. Anyway, that's one of the things I'm really cool and excited about. But what I'm also really excited about is I believe that we are one species on one planet, as one family, connected and singular. And the nation states and borders that we have are administrative conveniences, and that's all. And so what I'm really interested in is the impact of cryptocurrencies to reduce the borders and allow people to collaborate and work together. And I'm really interested in some of the live dynamic translation technologies that can allow people to engage and communicate dynamically in multiple languages, share their cultures, share their diverse experiences of being alive, and work together using technologies and financial systems that are non-geographic. I think that's hop and a skip away. And I think it's really exciting because it allows us to work together as one big family instead of viewing each other as separate. So I think, we have this them and us paradigm. And the sooner we can realize that there never was a them, the better. And that's very exciting for me.
Do you know, I do think that is incredibly exciting, but it raises a question for me, which I'm going to hurl in before I get to you, Sanj. We are going to get to you, don't worry. But I'm curious from your perspective on this, Maxim, which is, when you talk about this idea of, the technology that would help to provide that kind of democratization, if you like, of the accessibility to this technology, there seems to me to be an inherent flaw in as much as we are within our bubble of technology and our understanding of technology. And we, just as the types of people we are and the types of things that we work with, tend to be a little bit further ahead of the mainstream population. And in fact, there is a distinct lack of understanding, a distinct lack of education for the majority of the mainstream population. So when we talk about people who, maybe aren't as familiar or au fait with technology, and for them, cryptocurrency and blockchain and Bitcoin and all those kind of terms and phrases are very, very scary. And is there perhaps a little bit of a disconnect there in terms of the mainstream population being able to get on board with this versus us who are in our kind of centres of population, such as London or New York or LA or Hong Kong or wherever we may be?
Not at all. I think that it's a different phase of the development of the technology. Look at VHS, which I'm still, I've got a box full of those tapes. When VHS came along, and it was that or Betamax, right? And Betamax was better, but there were more movies available on VHS, so everyone went with VHS. Nobody looked at the two technologies, and some people did, but most people didn't look at the two technologies and think, oh, well, the number of lines of resolution on Betamax is better, therefore we should have that. What they did is they looked at the list of films available and said, I want to watch that film. I think that when we as at the frontier of new technologies, we're looking at all these different details. It's like a fine artist appraising a work or an architect looking at blueprints. That's not the way day-to-day interactions with technology occur. The way it occurs is that, here's an example. I'm working on developing, sorry, I'm trying to remember what I'm allowed to say. Yeah. So we're thinking of creating our own cryptocurrency, a group, myself and a group. And the reason that we're thinking of doing that is in order to commoditize and make more accessible access to certain financial products worldwide. I think I can say that. So when we do this, you're not going to use an application that tells you about the encryption system and copying and pasting long cryptocurrency codes into a wallet or any of that. You're just going to have a button that says, I want this currency, and there'll be a reason why you're using it. And all of the technology should be in the background. Look at Apple Pay. It's an incredible technology that anonymizes everything you're doing and makes it private. Nobody knows that. They just think, oh, it's awesome. I can pay with my watch. By the way, I've got one of those rings waiting for me.
So that's the curved ring that Maxim is referring to.
Yeah, can't wait. So the touch pay thing, nobody using that technology thinks, oh, it's interesting the way that there's an NFR chip powered by the magnetic, all of that stuff. The point I'm making is that when these technologies go mainstream, that for me, the really interesting phase is the concept and then the consumer grade version. And all the stuff in between, the general public don't have to deal with. So look far in the future, we are going to have an AI assistant. And that AI assistant will ultimately be manifested as a robot. And all of the technologies that feed into it, most people won't have a clue about. And that's exactly how technology should work. If the end user has to think too much to use it, then the technology is not working properly.
I fully agree with you. I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. But Sanj, why don't you tell us what things you're excited for in 2018?
There's a couple of things. I think, the Bitcoin bubble that's kind of just grown dramatically over the last 3 months. I mean, it's been growing for years, but bubble that's about to burst is going to be quite, I think, a pivotal shift in how those types of finances are going to be regulated, because it's going to be, they're predicting that a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, and there's going to be lots of, when I say lots of money, the money doesn't actually exist, is it? I mean, it's just in the ether. But yeah, I'm quite interested to see what happens when that bubble bursts, whether it's, in the new year or the year after or wherever it is, because I just feel that it's, cryptocurrency is going to have a strong part of how people, how commerce works in near future. And it just hasn't hit that tipping point yet because nothing bad has happened. Nothing dramatically bad has happened just yet.
Okay. So I'm curious. So I'm going back a little bit to what Maxim was saying, but I'm curious, Alan, from your perspective on this one, which is I'm going to say that whilst it's cool to think that we're going to have a future with artificial intelligent agents and robots that can respond to us and all this amazing cool technology, one of the things that I think we perhaps don't look at as much as we should do, but perhaps give more focus and attention to, is this idea that actually the type of technologies that we're creating and the types of technologies that are becoming more prevalent in the mainstream, and I do mean consumer mainstream here, not business to business, they are really facilitating this idea of loneliness and isolation and this disconnect that people have from each other and from society. And, I remember back in the day, and I don't know, it's showing my age here, there was a movie with Sandra Bullock called, what's it called? The Net or something like that. And in that movie, she was this loner who just stayed at home and she ordered her pizzas online and she, booked her aeroplane ticket online and nobody knew who she was. Nobody had ever kind of spoken to her in person. And I wonder if perhaps, there is a danger that some of this, new cool stuff that we're bringing to market is perhaps not really encouraging the idea of human connection. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one, Alan.
So I agree with that. Like, I've always thought that too. When you have multiple technology and you have people with their faces in their phones all the time, and I can order a pizza just by saying, I'm not going to say it because she'll say something back. But I could speak to my Amazon and say, I order pizza, and I don't really have to have that conversation with anybody other than a computer. I think that if you look at it from the other side of things, though, where technology has kind of opened us up more, I can have conversations with people halfway across the world easier today than ever. I can see people. I can jump on a Skype or a video call and speak with people halfway around the world, and it's easier than ever. So it's not so much that it's isolated, like physically isolated, intellectually, mentally, emotionally. I don't think so. I think we're opening up to new cultures, meeting new people, staying in contact with friends and family. If you're using technology properly, you're staying in contact with friends, maybe not family, and but you're checking in more often because it's easier today than it ever has been in human history to just say hello to somebody in London or Hollywood, and we can have this conversation much easier than we could ever have it. Imagine it's not too long ago we would have all been on payphones or attached to a wall, and that's not the case today.
It's a very good point, given that we have Alan calling in from New York and we have Sanj in London. And Maxim, are you in Los Angeles at the moment, or are you in London? I have no idea where you are these days.
I'm not sure I know where I am. I'm a voxel somewhere in space and time. I'm in Hollywood. I'm in Los Angeles.
There you go. See, so we've got a lovely international conversation happening right here and now.
Trying to get his break.
Thanks to the joys of technology. But Maxim, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this as well, though, in terms of this idea of technology as a facilitator for isolation and loneliness, and the kind of cultural habits that people have gotten themselves into in terms of this very insular lifestyle that people have gotten, quite complacent about. You see it all the time now, where there might be a group of people around a dinner table and nobody's even making eye contact with anybody else because they're all busy looking at their mobile phones, and sometimes people will text each other when they're even just sitting at the same table. They're texting each other instead of just talking to each other. And I'm kind of curious, Maxim, what's your thought on this?
Pictures of their food instead of eating it.
Yes, pictures of the food.
Yeah. But I actually love this. There's a beautiful photo somebody posted of a group of people sitting on a bus all on their phones.
Yes.
And then there was a photo of the same kind of setup in the 50s. Everyone's in the newspapers.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
I think that, my goodness, I think it's a little bit like, for me, the development of this kind of technology is a little bit like understanding how fire works. If you're the keeper of the fire, you know that it's your responsibility not to let the fire go in the wrong place, not to set fire to the dry wood and the leaves on the floor and start a forest fire, not to set fire to people's homes, but instead to use the fire appropriately for things like cooking and all of the wonderful things that fire does for us as a species. I think that we have been, as technologists, we have been negligent in our application of our so-called social technologies. In fact, when people are ignoring everyone around them because they're engaged in some kind of social media, they are being incredibly social. They're just not being appropriately so, because they're in the company of people right now, and there should be some kind of sense of prioritization. And I think where we, as the developers of this technology, I can't speak for anyone else on this podcast, but take, for example, right now, we're on a podcast when we should be sitting at the table pulling crackers and eating too much food, but we are being very social. So I think that one of the things that I'm forecasting actually is the development of a greater sense of responsibility for our users in terms of the quality of their lives. Right now, our primary focus is eyeballs, right? Facebook, the guy who left Facebook said recently that they discovered a vulnerability in the human brain, which we know that we become obsessed with an uncertain level of prize. It's like the fruit machines, slot machines, that you don't know whether you're going to win a lot of money or nothing. And that uncertainty is deeply addictive for us as a species. And that vulnerability is being constantly tapped by every website that wants to make money from marketing. But I think over time, we are going to have to recognize the way that we're reshaping people's lives. And I'm optimistic. I'm an optimistic realist. And so the optimist in me says that we will recognize that responsibility and begin to have influences on people that are more benign. And a really lovely example of that is, have you noticed in Facebook, every now and then you log in and it says, "Good morning, I hope you have a great day," or something like that. I would love to see some data that shows the impact of that. When it says, we care about your life and here's a great thing that happened to you, however cynical you are, it does make you feel a little bit up. And so I think that we're going to see this technology positively impact not just our quality of life in general, with feedback loops into how healthy we are and happy we are, but also encouraging us to form more positive and natural bonds with people. I think this is coming.
Okay. So, Sanj, what's your thoughts in terms of whether or not we're cultivating and nurturing a generation of lonely, isolated individuals who don't understand the proper social context of when to interact digitally or when to interact physically?
I mean, all of this technology is fantastic. There's some really incredible innovations that have occurred that have allowed people to do really great things, and there are some social problems that have been associated with, some of these innovations, whether it is social media or, people can now do things without having to interact with someone. I think the issue really it's not the problem. The technology is not the problem. It's the person. And there are people that are susceptible to, social disorder through technology. And I think the only way to help those people or to combat that, that disorder occurring is through education and through talking about, the problems and trying to understand, why they're causing problems and how to kind of defeat them. I mean, with regard to the example you gave, the Sandra Bullock film, The Net, that's quite an amplified view of that social disorder. And, there are some people that have problems within it, and there's some people that don't, and there's everything in between. I don't think, people sitting around a dinner table with their phones, I don't think that's a bad thing, especially if people, address it and talk about it and say, look, put your phone down, let's do something else. And whether they do or not is up to them. It's all about choice. But when people are, people are really upset or really sad at a time and they're kind of just jumping into a downward spiral through social media or through technology, that is a bad thing. But it was already there anyway. So, is it technology's problem or is it technology's fault? I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question. I guess it's human nature to have these problems, and technology may be just that kind of conduit that's kind of amplifying those problems.
If I could touch back on what Maxim was saying about there having to be a social responsibility as well. It's that social responsibility has to happen fairly urgently though, because as technology grows, it's just going to get worse. And I keep thinking to myself, people go to Facebook and everybody knows that you go and people like to portray themselves in the light that they see themselves. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like their Facebook is their second person. Facebook is the look that they give to everybody around them. And when you start talking about future technology, and I hate to bring it back to VR, but once you're able to create an entire world that is like your perfect world and state, and go into that world, how long is it going to be before you just don't ever want to come out? So that responsibility, I think, has to happen quickly, or else we're going to end up with, I could see people sitting in their rooms all day, like you may not be happy with the life you have, but this life that I have in my VR reality, my VR world is much better. So I'm going to go there instead.
So I completely agree. I think, I think it's inevitable. That is going to happen. I wrote an article about this complex, which I called the digital apex, where reality no longer becomes reality anymore, and the digital reality becomes your reality. Whether it's the dystopian vision that was portrayed in the Matrix or something, maybe not as far as that. There will be a time where people will plug in or jack in or whatever it is into the mainframe, and that reality will be more important than the reality we have now. And to me, that's just human nature. We've evolved into this point, and the only way to switch it off is to turn off electricity. It's never gonna stop. It will go in that direction. There will be people that will make choices and say, you know what, I'd rather fly out to New Zealand and jump on a white water raft and have that experience as opposed to jacking in and having a digital experience. But the reality is there's so much investment in developing technologies that take people away from their current worlds that it's going to happen. It's just something that it may seem sad, but it's just the way it is.
Well, it's interesting because this is actually one of the core premises of the Oasis in Ready Player One, which is this idea that, in a dystopian future where there's not enough resources and we've, utilized all of the natural resources on the planet and the cost of fuel is so exorbitant that it's now, the realm of only billionaires to be able to travel on a bus, for example, that everybody chooses instead to go into the Oasis through virtual reality headsets because that's the only real way for them to explore and experience the world, is to actually interact through this, shared universe within the Oasis. And so in some ways that vision is perhaps not quite as far away as people might have thought it was. But I also want to follow up on what Sanj was saying in the idea of people feeling that their digital world is perhaps as important, if not more important, than their real life identity and the real world that they exist within. And in some ways, I think that this has already been the case for the games community and gamers for many decades now, where actually that personal avatar and that personal character that people are playing within the game has actually taken them a long, long time to cultivate and get the right level of experience and the right, equipment and objects and all the other stuff that they've spent that time and that energy to cultivate their character, if you like, within these games. And so when something happens, and there's various instances where something's happened and a game's been wiped out and all of the records have been wiped out, and so these gamers are devastated when they lose their character or the things that their character had, because for them the digital world was more important. And to go back to Maxim's comments about Second Life, for example, we see a lot of examples in Second Life, and I'm sure this will become the case in Sansar, which is the new platform that Linden Labs have created for the VR platform. But certainly in Second Life, for a lot of people, it was a primary source of income. They had a business inside Second Life. They were making a living, and that's actually how they made their living, in a virtual world. And, people who met each other in these virtual worlds got married in these virtual worlds. Such was the depth of the importance of those relationships and those interactions in those digital environments. I wonder, Maxim...
I've got friends whose parents divorced because of Second Life. So this is...
Wow.
And it sounds funny, but it was actually quite a traumatic thing for my friend, because his parents were in their 50s, and he was in his early 20s, and he would come home, and his mum would be upstairs and his dad would be downstairs, and he would say, hi mum, hi dad, and no one would say anything because they were kind of glued to their screens. Wow. And they met other people through Second Life, and decided that they weren't happy anymore with their spouse, and decided to have a divorce. So, you're right. People do want to escape. People, do have this kind of, yearning to go in a certain direction. And sometimes these games or these virtual worlds give that to people. And, they can have a positive impact, but they can also have a negative impact as well.
Maxim, what's your take on this in terms of digital identity and the importance of digital identity?
Well, I just think we need to go back to the basics of this concept. In what way is it less real? We have this idea of natural, man-made and non-man-made, and natural and unnatural, which we've been working with these ideas for decades now. But we do appear to be a product of nature as well. So at what point is something natural or unnatural? There's a deeper debate to be had about that. It's kind of poncy, but if you say, well, capital N nature, the big N is that means that there is a natural way for us to engage with technology. There's a natural way for us to drive a car, fly airplanes, and quantum computing and all of that. And there's an unnatural way, and there's an unnatural way. So if you think about our interaction with technology and things like Second Life, things like having an avatar, in many ways, one could argue that our relationship with our identities is similar to the relationship with the inner self with our outer world persona. And the difference is, of course, that there's much less consequence. If our avatar falls off a bus and dies, we just get annoyed about it, which is obviously a much smaller consequence, which means we can take greater risks while still fooling our brains into having something like a facsimile of a real experience. So I think that I actually think that if we stop thinking of this online identity as somehow fake and instead see it as an actual part of us, the debate becomes a bit more. I know we can make more progress with that debate, but at the same time, I think the danger is not that we're living a fake life. I think those relationships are real. I have a friend who is now with somebody that he met purely through gaming. So it's the opposite of that separation. But I think that the danger is that we get these practical effects, like, for example, reducing our interaction, our day-to-day interaction, where you're in a room with somebody and engaging with them. And that's important for the same reason that, salespeople travel all over the world to have face-to-face meetings. Still today, probably more than ever, in spite of the fact that we've got these empathy engine VR headsets and video conference calls, and here we all are having a call internationally, there's a place for different types of interaction. The question is, who makes the judgment about what is or is not acceptable? What is and is meaningful? And I think the answer to that lies in the question of the concept of potential. What is an individual's potential, and how can that potential manifest itself? I know someone who's a digital artist, and she works exclusively in 3D art. You have to put a VR headset on to witness these environments that she creates. That's valid in my view, but it's not tangible. So I think that each of us will have different drives, different desires, different experiences that we want, and all of it's valid. And somebody somewhere has to make recommendations about what is and is not healthy. And I don't want to get too far into this. You know, we have this question about when we've got robot personal assistants or AIs, is it okay to abuse those artificial personas? I would say no, for our own sanity. So, you know, there are consequences for our psyche when we're interacting in these virtual environments.
It's interesting because I know, Alan, that little known fact that you did actually have a business in Second Life.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up.
He's like, no, don't tell anybody that. But
I was by no means making a living from it, but yes, I did have a business in Second Life.
But I am curious though, from your experience on the flip side of this, because we're talking about this and you know, whilst I have, you know, experienced and had experiences in Second Life, I haven't run a business in Second Life, and I haven't necessarily had that degree of realism, I suppose, in terms of the responsibility of taking somebody's currency and having to deliver a product or a thing back to them. That degree of responsibility, I think, is something that changes the experience somewhat. I'm curious from your perspective, Alan, what your take is on this.
On the responsibility of having a product? Well, I mean, it's funny because I'll use Second Life as the example here. It was, you know, the great thing about it was there were no barriers to entry. You know, and in that way, that sense, you could take any one of your skills, any skill that you might have, and take that and translate it into a business. Now, obviously, I'm going to get a little bit geeky. It was really cool because, you know, like I scouted areas, I scouted high traffic areas, you know, how much for land and how, you know, how much am I going to need to put up a building. And then, of course, you know, there was inventory and things that I was creating outside of Second Life and loading into Second Life. So there were a lot of those real life business decisions that you make, even in a digital world. So, and for somebody, and I'll be quite honest, I was younger, a much younger Alan at the time, but like the experience, like something like that can give somebody so much experience that they wouldn't be able to get. Like starting a business in a digital environment was so much easier than starting a business in real life, but you're still getting that experience because you are going out there and you're doing the research and you're doing your due diligence to figure out exactly how you want this business to work, what you're going to charge. There's pricing, where are the customers coming from, how can you attract customers, and then obviously you were able to put up in Second Life. I haven't been on it in years, but you were able to put up posts and say 10% off and do deals, and that's like the kind of experience that most people can't get in real life. But here in a digital platform, it was open. Like you could have a child learning about commerce in a digital environment. It's really amazing what digital environments can do, and when we think about the learning and the experience that you can gain from them. And that was my experience with it. And it was for me, it was a great experience.
It's interesting that you say this because I actually do know of a young man who I believe he is under the age of 15, and he is the CEO of a company whose mission is they basically build things in Minecraft for brands. So if somebody wants something built in Minecraft, an environment built within Minecraft, they basically pay his company, and he has a team of kids all over the world who he gets them to build the thing. And it's a bona fide business. He's getting paid, tens of thousands of dollars for each job that he's doing. So I completely agree with Alan in terms of this idea that digital environments can actually teach some incredibly valuable commercial and life skills to any age of person. And it really is a bit of a democratization in terms of giving access to those opportunities. But, gentlemen, I'm very aware that we are keeping people from their Christmas dinners or Christmas lunches or whatever time of day you're listening to this on Christmas Day. And we should all be getting back to our various families. So what I would like to do is ask you to just tell me what the one thing is that you would say that you have the most hope for when it comes to new and emerging technologies. What is the one thing that you hope will have the most impact? And I'm going to start with you, Sanj.
There was the net neutrality thing that happened this week, where the FCC basically voted against a law that was passed back in 2015, and which kind of, even though nothing bad has happened yet, it kind of allows big corporate telecoms companies to control, how much data goes through their pipes, basically. And even though, it could be a very bad thing for America at the moment, and everyone's predicting that it will be, because it kind of makes small businesses and also people with not much income, it could allow them not to have enough access online. But it's always in the face of such provocation that innovators start to become even more innovative. And I'm wondering, I'm looking to see what comes out of that. There's something that a lot of people that stream movies online use, VPNs, which are quite useful things for many reasons, including watching films online, but also for other reasons. And I'm quite excited to see what innovative ideas come out of this problem that supposedly has started in the US. So I'm quite excited by that.
Okay, Maxim, what's your thing that you are most looking forward to in 2018 and that you have the hope is going to have the most impact?
I'm really excited about the way that deep learning systems are beginning to have an impact. Actually earlier than I was expecting. And we're beginning to see, for example, there was a presentation recently about autonomous vehicles where historically they've been set up using radar and laser scanning to observe the environment. And they're now using deep learning to teach autonomous vehicles to drive by looking at videos of the road and discovering that the system is very capable of becoming better than a human driver just based on those visuals. I think that now that we're beginning to come online with systems that are capable of managing the big data that deep learning systems require, we're going to see more and more and more of what I'm going to pedantically call facsimile AI becoming more and more useful to us, just dealing with things better and better. For example, there's an AI now that is at least as good as a doctor at recognizing cancers. And this sort of thing is amazing. And I think that we're going to see more and more of that over 2018, where it's not that the AI is trying to kill us in a dystopian future, but rather it's just an incredibly useful way of doing things that we suck at, big repetitive tasks that require a great focus on detail. I think that the development of technology itself and specific technologies that make our lives better it's just going to ramp up. It's going to get faster and faster. And I think that's wonderful.
Somebody who doesn't believe Skynet is coming to kill us all. I love it. Alan, what's your take on this?
I'm somebody who does believe Skynet is coming to kill us all. I actually just want to touch on that. I don't know if anybody read the article where DeepMind actually created a new chocolate chip cookie, which I thought was very interesting. It was just interesting. They put in a bunch of data and DeepMind actually spit out a new chocolate chip cookie. And from what I understand, it's pretty good. So I think for me, I think anything, this kind of goes back to a point made earlier about the breakdown of borders and humans becoming a single unit. So I think anything that facilitates that, to me, is extremely exciting. Anything in terms of new energy sources, one of my big things for us is space exploration. We can't do that on fossil fuels. So I've read articles on all kinds of new energy sources, and I even a few years back, I remember there was blueprints to what the first warp drive might look like. Things like that just progress mankind and also healthcare tech, with the nano robots and things that just can improve quality of life for people. And again, the DNA rewriting is awesome. And I am in America, so I'll use awesome. But, for me, the exciting things are everything that is going to create the next evolution of mankind. Whatever that is, whenever it happens, anything that's going to work towards that next evolution, that's what I'm excited about.
Okay. Well, personally, I'm going to tack on to the back of what Alan is saying, and certainly in terms of energy, I'm going to say the idea and concept of decentralized energy is an incredibly exciting concept that we haven't heard enough about yet. But I do hope that 2018 is the year that we hear more about that, because the concepts around decentralizing energy will completely change the face of the way that we consume resources such as fossil fuels. And so that, I think, can be incredibly exciting and have a significant amount of impact for everybody on this planet. But then just more personally, and because I'm selfish and I like cool, new, weird stuff, the thing I am excited to get my hands on in February, I'm told it's February, don't let me down, is the Ori ring and the Signal wristband. Bone conducting technology. I am very interested in this progression of bone conducting technology for making phone calls and what have you, and being able to listen to things with just touching your ear or your cheek or whatever, so that the sound is being conducted directly into your ear, because it begins to remove this need for screens and this idea that we haven't quite figured out yet how to remove the frame from all of this technology, whether it's AR or VR. We still have to have this frame of the technology. I think bone conduction is a really interesting first step to beginning to remove some of those barriers. So that's the thing that I'm kind of excited about. So having said all of that, I'm very aware now that people should be getting back to their wonderful Christmas day. So I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, if you would care to share with our lovely listeners your social media handle of choice, so that they can go away and find out a little bit more about you if they're really, really bored with their Christmas lunch or dinner. Sanj, what would that be?
So you can get me on either SanjSurati, which is SanjSurati, or on Tiger Heart Tech, which is TigerHeartTech.
Wonderful, thank you. And Maxim, what about your good self?
Pretty easy to find. It's just maximjago.com. Basically, Maxim Jago without a gap on all the social media. And there's a few things online that way.
Wonderful, thank you. And Alan, what about yourself?
You can find me on Twitter. It's badass_marketer. And that's it.
Still the best name ever.
I would suggest we should do one of these at midnight on New Year's Eve.
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know if people might have something slightly better to do.
I mean, if we could do it on Christmas, we could do it at midnight on New Year's Eve.
Okay.
I'm up for that.
That says a lot about what people have got to do on New Year's Eve. But thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. And thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe and review. We wish you a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thinking of starting your own podcast? Why not speak to the GL Pro UK team? They handle all of our podcasting service needs. Tell them that Digital Jam Session sent you and you'll get 10% off your first order. Find out more at www.glpro.co.uk. digitaljamsessions.com